So, who do you guys hope wins the Republican nomination? Have you given any thought to that? I know I don't have any Republicans here, maybe a few. Every now and then a Republican shows up, but who would you prefer? Who would you rather win the Republican Party's nomination? Obviously, they're all horrible. And obviously, it kind of comes down to two names. I mean, the two names that are bandied about are obviously Trump and Desantis. There are, I think, some others running, but none of them really seem to mean much of anything, right? Trump, Lance Sloan. Yeah, I agree with you guys, though. I agree. I think I want Trump. I think we're better off with Trump winning than DeSantis. And, you know, I'll tell you the reason why. Because I think that if Trump wins and what I'm really most concerned about is the debate stage. You know, because if it comes down to Joe Biden and Trump, it's going to be two doddering old fools, you know, and Trump is going to try to make his case against, you know, trans people and immigrants and stuff, but it's going to be a weak case that only really appeals to Trump's base. So, you know, the 25 to 30% of the country that actually likes Trump is going to be excited to hear his bigoted nonsense against, you know, people who have done nothing to anyone. But if DeSantis gets on that debate stage and gets to make that case, he's actually going to be able to articulate these things. And a lot of Americans that are not as, you know, entrenched in these issues as us terminally sort of online political kind of people that are always paying attention to the news, whether we want to or not. A lot of those kind of people, you know, we've heard the arguments. But for the people who are kind of naive to the arguments, who have never heard them before, they're going to hear a reasonably articulate, reasonably intelligent person make the case against trans people, make the case against immigrants, you know, and these cases are going to be fallacious and horrible and bigoted and mostly emotional, but they're going to be presented in such a way to make them seem as though they are, you know, these are fact-based arguments and there are solid reasons to believe these things, and here are some facts and figures. They're going to be probably made up or distorted facts or figures, but they're going to be there and there's not going to be anyone to fact-check them in real time. So there's going to be a person in the form of DeSantis doing that, and then who is going to be the person that's expected to deliver the rebuttal? Joe Biden. That's an ugly thought to me. Because you know what? If it's Biden and Trump, and he's just like, Trump's like, you know, listen, he's bad. And then Joe Biden's like, it's good. Whatever, that's a wash. Who gives a shit? That doesn't move the needle one way or the other. But if you have a guy that's actually able to articulate some bigoted sort of thoughts against like LGBT people and immigrants and so on and so forth, all the usual targets of the Republican Party, and then the only person to offer rebuttal is like, yeah, no. That's what I really worry about, is how a Biden versus DeSantis debate moves the needle when a bunch of people who are not familiar with either of these arguments suddenly are hearing them for the first time, and those are the two guys. Those are the two guys they're hearing from. I don't know. I don't think debates really sway many people anymore. I feel most people have their mind made up by the time the debates happen. That's ridiculous. Not true at all. That's because, you know, you and I probably spend our time around people with political opinions, but the majority of people that I have ever like encountered out there in the world literally do not pay attention to politics or political issues until it is time to pick a president. Like, there are plenty of people who literally spend like the 3.5 years between like election cycles. Well, there's 4 years, but like you know, probably not even that. They probably like I think a lot of people tune in around the time of the first debate. There are tons of Americans who do not watch the news, do not pay attention to anything that's going on. They glean things here and there from conversations with others and stuff, and then they feel like, well, I guess I better sit down and watch the debate, see which one of these two gonna win my vote. And that's like when they're exposed to these issues. You know, like they don't listen to the talk radio. They don't listen. They're not on the internet listening to this shit. Like they're doing other things. They have other interests. They're not political people. There's plenty of people in this country that are not political until it's election season. And then even then, there's a lot of people who are just never political, just never pay attention to any of it ever because it's like, it's all a bunch of bullshit, which maybe they're the wisest among us. I don't know. How can we best appeal to non-political people, or are they just unreachable? Well, having a candidate on the national stage who could get his way through a sentence would probably be helpful. You know, like having a person who could actually convey information to people in an effective manner would probably be a good thing. So, yeah, maybe Biden, not the greatest choice for that. Now, occasionally he'll surprise you and halfway make sense. But man, I'm, you know, like I said, if it's Biden versus Trump, that's a wash. They're both mush-mouthed morons. But DeSantis worries me because he's not a mush-mouthed moron. He's not particularly charismatic or interesting or engaging, but he can get his way through a sentence. He's polished. He knows how to get from one side of his talking point to the other reasonably gracefully. So that's why I think he's the graver concern to me, because at the end of the day, I'm not really so much worried about who gets to be president for the sake of what policy agenda they're going to pass. I mean, I am worried about that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not totally devoid of concern in that regard. But my primary concern really is how the president affects the constituency. What the president does with his bully pulpit, what sort of ideas he propagates from, you know, the mantle of presidency. Because, you know, the worst thing about Trump being president was not really any policy that he passed. It really wasn't any law that he did. He did some tax cuts, which is pretty standard Republican fare. He did some executive orders that were pretty ass backwards, and a lot of those, you know, either got killed in the courts or were immediately overturned when he left office. But he really didn't do much in terms of legislatively. But what he did a lot was he formed a base of cultists around him, and he got them to do wild shit in his name, like storm the Capitol, like try to overturn the results of the election, like try to, you know, install him as a dictator, which that to me is way crazier than anything he ever did legislatively. I think most people would agree that's way crazier than anything he actually ever accomplished legislatively. That being said, I think we have to definitely worry a lot about who's put up as a candidate, you know, optically. And I'm not talking about in terms of, you know, what blemishes they may have or, you know, what attacks could be made against them, because like we can just understand that our politicians are all scum in this country and no one makes it to the top without being a scumbag. But we probably should try to select people for articulation sake. Like, I think that it's probably important that the president be an effective communicator. Now, obviously, for the Trump crowd, they communicate more in like emotional grunting language. So, you know, he doesn't have to be particularly articulate as long as he just like grunts the right syllables at the right times and makes the right faces. You know, trans people, immigrants, you know, that they're fine with it. That's all they need. But for the rest of us, for the, you know, 70% of the country who are not complete morons, maybe they want someone who can actually talk. I don't know. But I guess not, because our vaunted democratic process continues to churn out mush-mouthed morons more than it churns out articulate people capable of communicating ideas effectively. So what do I know? Apparently, goddamn nothing. I dislike Biden, but he isn't senile. He beat Trump pretty easily in the 2020 debates, in my opinion. I think if you actually look at polls of those debates, it was pretty close for a lot of people. And also, beating Trump in a debate is not really a good benchmark for like not senile, right? Oh, he's obviously not senile. He didn't lose a debate to the other senile man. Like, what? That's another thing too, is like these guys, I think a lot of times when they have to do these like high pressure public functions, they're loaded up on, you know, like uppers and, you know, made, you know, their things are done to help them have that, the hyper focus they need. I mean, you'll even notice that like when the debate begins, Biden looks surprisingly, oh, wow, he's surprisingly lucid. And then, you know, kind of as they get to the later parts of the debate, it's less and less. So, I mean, I don't know. Cocktail of uppers. Yeah. I disagree. Biden wouldn't be able to do hour-long speeches at Krista Valencourt. I mean, have you seen the quality of those speeches? I mean, granted, they're still more lucid than Trump speeches. Trump speeches are basically rambling tidbits of nothing, strewn together haphazardly, you know, half-finished thoughts, incomplete sentences, and emotional grunting. But yeah, the Biden speeches are not much better. I mean, the Biden speeches oftentimes are just like him trying to read a script, but every other word he butchers. He's constantly mush-mouthed. And, you know, a lot of times he really doesn't seem like he doesn't really talk like a person who has any sort of real comprehension of what he's saying sometimes. Like he reads words as if he doesn't understand their meaning. Like, let me do it with the chat for a second. They'll find a working Biden clone by the time the debate happens. Obviously, lol, I disagree. Biden wouldn't be able to do hour-long speeches at Krista Valencourt. They have a doctor and pharmacist drugging them up. An earpiece with someone feeding quips during debates wouldn't hurt either. Cocaine is a hell of a drug. He shakes the hand of imaginary people and is always confused. I think even that, I was like putting too much emphasis on the right words there, because I can't help but know what those things mean. Whereas I think Biden kind of really doesn't a lot of the time. I'm not saying Biden is 100% gone 100% of the day, but I'm saying that Biden is more than 40% gone a lot of the time. I mean, yeah, I'm like, these people have handlers, for fuck's sake. I mean, like, look how long they hid Dianne Feinstein's mental problems. I mean, you know, there have been people who have been calling it out for a while now, you know, for years and years. But only recently has it gotten so bad that it's become almost impossible to deny. Senile people sundown. Very few are never lucid. Right. And I mean, like, when you're talking about a guy that has professional handlers around him at all times, like, you know, they can kind of hide him in his moments where he is not lucid. They can also do things to induce lucidity, especially if they know just the right cocktail of drugs to feed him to kind of get his mind sharp for an event if it needs to be. Biden almost never has anything scheduled after 4 p.m. Classic sundowner. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he was just vegging out in front of a television for most of that time. Half the time he's like, I've never seen this movie before. And it's like, that's your favorite movie, Grandpa? Oh, no, I hate it. You're a lion, dog face, pony soldier, Jack. Get the president some Adderall. Stat. Come on down to Crazy Scotty's T-shirt blowout sale. Oh, we got shirts, and we've got shirts. Big or small, we've got them all. We've got a shirt that says drugs, and we've got a shirt that says my ancestry. We've got more colors than the rainbow. Right now, you can enter coupon code CRAZYSALE20 and get 20% off. Not 10%, not 5%, not 1%, 20% off. How can we offer such a crazy deal? It's because we're crazy. But don't be crazy and miss the DFF summer sale going on